We are actually playing with the wrong rules for the game we're actually in. If you have at least one competitor, you have a game. And according to James Carsey, there are two types of games. There are finite games and there are infinite games. A finite game is defined as known players, fixed rules, and an agreed upon objective, like football. There are referees there to manage the rules. We all agree to the rules, and whoever has more points at the end of the game is the winner. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. Then you have infinite games. An infinite game is defined as known and unknown players. New players can join at any time. The game has changeable rules, and the objective is to perpetuate the game, to stay in the game as long as possible. And if you think about it, we are players in infinite games every day of our lives. There's no such thing as winning marriage. It doesn't exist. And if you thought you could win in your marriage, you are no longer married. There's no such thing as winning global politics, and there's definitely no such thing as winning business. But if you listen to the language of too many leaders, they talk about being number one, being the best, beating their competition. Based on what? There's no agreed upon metrics, and there's no agreed upon timeframes. In other words, we're playing the infinite game of business with a finite mindset. And if you're playing the game with the wrong rules, something happens. When you play an infinite game with a finite mindset, there's a few very predictable and consistent outcomes. Decline of trust, decline of cooperation, and the decline of innovation. Let me give you a real-life example that I experienced of the difference between somebody playing with a finite mindset and somebody playing with an infinite mindset. I spoke at an education summit for Microsoft. I also spoke at an education summit for Apple. At the Microsoft summit, the vast majority of the executives spent the vast majority of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One was obsessed with where they were going, the other was obsessed with beating their competition. Guess which one was struggling? So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. This was Microsoft's response to the iPod. And this little piece of technology that they gave me was absolutely brilliant. It was fantastic. The user interface was simple. It was beautifully designed. It worked flawlessly. So at the end of my Apple talk, I'm sharing a taxi with a senior Apple executive, and I couldn't help myself. I just had to stir the pot. So I turned to him and I said, Microsoft gave me their new Zune. It is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he looked at me and he said, I have no doubt. And the conversation was over. When somebody's playing with an infinite mindset, they know that sometimes you have the better product and sometimes somebody else has a better product. There's no such thing as winning or losing. There's no such thing as being the best. There's only ahead and behind. And the goal is not to beat the competition. The goal is to outlast the competition. The only true competitor in the infinite game is yourself. Pause. A just cause is a cause so just that you would willingly sacrifice your own interests in order to advance this cause. It doesn't mean your life, but it means sometimes turning down a better paying job to stay in this job. It might mean long business hours, frequent business trips, being away from your family. And even though you may not like these things, they feel worth it, because they feel like the work you're doing is contributing to something bigger than yourself, so valuable that you would willingly make these sacrifices in order to see that just cause advanced. It's an ideal. You will never actually get there, but you would be willing to die trying. And you can see it. After the revolution was won, shortly after they had the abolition of slavery. Shortly after that, they had women's suffrage. Shortly after that, they had the civil rights movement. And shortly after that, they had gay rights. And you can see they're trying to get closer and closer and closer to this ideal. The question is what purpose does your company exist for? What just cause is it hoping to advance? That if everything went absolutely perfectly, the world would be different than it is now, and your company is devoted to helping to build that world. Because that is what gives the people who work in our company a sense of purpose, that their work has more worth than simply the things they do during the day, that their lives and their work have meaning. There's another guy who does what I do. He writes books, he gives talks like this one. He's exceptionally good at what he does. He's extremely well respected. I hate him. He's always been very nice to me when I've seen him at conferences. I hate him. And I will go online and I will check his book ranking, and then I will immediately check mine. I don't check anybody else's, just his. And if I'm ahead, I'm smug. And if he's ahead, I'm angry. I want to beat him. We were invited to speak at the same conference, and I don't mean like me in the morning, him in the evening. I mean like on the stage at the exact same time. We were going to be interviewed together. And the interviewer thought it would be fun if we introduced each other. So I went first. I turned to him and I said, you make me really insecure. I said, all of your strengths are all of my weaknesses. And when your name comes up, I get uncomfortable. He looked at me and he said, funny, I feel the same about you. The reason I had so much anger towards him, the reason I was so competitive with him, is because his strengths revealed to me my weaknesses. And it was much easier for me to direct that energy against him than it was to take a hard look at myself. That's the value of a worthy rival. Competitors are people we want to beat, we want to win. But the problem with that is this game has no finish line. It's like running in a race and we're so driven to beat our competitors that we would trip them. We would resort to anything to win. The problem is we may win the race, but we're still a slow runner. And there's going to be another race and another race and another race. There is no finish line in this game. And so when we have that kind of competitive energy, it actually hurts us. If we take on this new idea that we no longer have competitors, we now have worthy rivals, and a worthy rival is another player in the game that is worthy of comparison. Sometimes they can be in your industry and sometimes not, but they have a strength. They're actually better at things than you are. Maybe their products are better, maybe their customer service is better, maybe their website is better, maybe their culture is better, maybe their leaders are stronger. And instead of being angry about it, we thank them. We're grateful that their strengths reveal to us our weaknesses so we know where we have to work. Because remember, the only true competitor in the infinite game is ourselves. If we truly think we're the best, that makes us blind to our weaknesses. Remember MySpace? They had no clue. They thought they were the 800-pound gorilla until Facebook showed up. That's called blind. You can have a worthy rival in your own office. We have these little competitive things sometimes at work where we hear that one of our colleagues gets a promotion and we get mad. They don't deserve it. I deserve it. It's like Gollum. Or we can admire them. They're good. They're great leaders. They command respect and loyalty in a way that I don't. And instead of hating them because it makes me feel insecure, I'm going to commit myself to become a better version of myself. You get to choose your own worthy rivals. Make sure they challenge you. Make sure they work Make sure they push you to be a better version of yourself. And when they drop out of the game, you find another one. Back in the day, Apple's worthy rival was IBM. IBM was the Navy, and Apple were the pirates. And then they fell out of the game. Then it was Microsoft. Microsoft was the Navy, and Apple were the pirates. Then they fell out of the game. And these days, maybe it's Facebook or Amazon. But once again, Apple uses these worthy rivals to make them, to push them to be even better. Who are your worthy rivals? Learn from them, push yourself. That if you stayed on the path you're on, eventually it's going to run out and you're going to go out of business. That's what happens. If you don't blow up your own company to advance the cause, the market will blow it up for you. George Eastman, the founder of Kodak, he had a just cause. He wanted to democratize photography. Prior to George Eastman, the only way that we could take pictures is we had to hire a professional photographer. And because of George Eastman, he invented film. It allowed the rest of us to take pictures ourselves. You didn't have to learn how to coat big metal plates with chemicals. It took hours and it was expensive and heavy and dangerous. And photography took off. And the company was obsessed with making photography cheaper and simpler and cheaper and simpler for all of us. And in 1975, one of their scientists, a man by the name of Steve Sasson, invented the digital camera. And the executives at Kodak suppressed the technology because they feared that it would cannibalize film sales. They couldn't bring themselves to imagine a digital world. They couldn't bring themselves to recognize that they had to go through this upheaval to go from a film company and a chemical company and a paper company into a digital company. And they knew that this digital thing would catch on in about 10 years, and sure enough, almost to the year, 10 years later, digital showed up in the rest of our lives. In fact, Kodak made billions of dollars from the royalties they made from the patents they had. Then the patents ran out, and 5 years later, they went bankrupt. Because if you're not willing to blow up your own company, the market will blow it up for you. They didn't have the strength to say, we have to make this change even though it's going to hurt. And I call it a capacity for existential flexibility, because you do not have the capacity for existential flexibility until you have a just cause, because otherwise it's just random shiny object stuff. Or two, that you don't have trusting teams, because you're going to put your company through unbelievable stress, and the people better know why you're doing it because they agree with the move and they're willing to suffer in the short term because it's the right thing to do to advance the cause. We're in. Let's do this. Every company that goes through an existential flex, like Apple becoming the Macintosh, put the company through hell, and it was worth it. And if you don't have to do it in your tenure, you may never have to do it as the leader of your company. But is your company prepared to do it for the leader who takes over after you? You have to prepare your company for existential flexibility if you want to stay in the infinite game. If you want your company to die when you quit, then ignore everything I'm telling you. This may be the hardest one of all, because everything that I have explained to you today is unbelievably difficult work. Making decisions that are the right decision to make to advance your cause, which sometimes means turning down more money from someone else, is hard to do. Building trusting teams is unbelievably difficult. It's not an event. You don't just have a company offsite. It's a lifestyle. It's the difference between having children and being a parent. Having children takes like 5 minutes, if you're lucky. Raising children takes a very long time. Getting a promotion and becoming, earning a leadership position takes 5 minutes. Your boss says, you're promoted. Go out for dinner, celebrate. Being a leader is unbelievably difficult, and it's a completely new lifestyle. It means putting my interests aside to create an environment in which my people can work to their natural best. It's being invested in the growth of others. It's sometimes lonely and thankless. Sometimes you don't get immediate results. It's like going to the gym. You go to the gym, you come back, you look in the mirror. What do you see? Nothing. You go to the gym the next day, you come back, you look in the mirror. What do you see? Nothing. But you commit yourself to the lifestyle. That if I work out every single day for 20 minutes, I know with 100% certainty I will get into shape. I don't know when. And that's the problem. Because in the finite game, We like to predict. We like to guess our results, and we like to predict when they're going to happen. In the infinite game, the results are 100% certain. I just can't tell you exactly when they're going to happen. It's good to have goals. There are finite gains within the infinite game. There are wins within the infinite game. The infinite game is the context within which those finite games exist. Those finite games exist to advance a cause bigger than ourselves. That's hard. Building a company for existential flexibility and then actually going through it, hard. Having to look at our competitors, but then really look at ourselves and admit that we suck, and then have to work on it? Oh, so much easier to just spend more money on advertising. Hard. It's easy to write your purpose on your website. It's really hard to actually make decisions based on your purpose. Hard. All of these things are hard. Not to mention all the pressures that we're all under. The overwhelming amount of pressure that we have, either it's the incentive structure inside our companies that are telling us, make the numbers by the end of the year, make the numbers by the end of the year, think short term, be selfish, be selfish. Those are the pressures upon us. If you work for a public company, oh my God, even worse. The pressures on us in this modern day and age are overwhelming for us to maintain a finite mindset. The courage to lead means I will reject that mindset and I will embrace a new mindset, even though I may feel that I am in the minority. And here's the irony. We've been suppressing these feelings for a long time. We keep being told that we're naive, you don't understand how business works. We feel like we're in the minority, but in reality, we are the majority. What does it mean to live an infinite life? Clearly, our lives are finite. We're born, we die. But life is infinite. The game of life is infinite. There's no winner of life. The game will continue with us or without us. Like business will continue with you or without you. It doesn't care if you go bankrupt or not. That means every single one of us has a choice how we live our lives. Do you want to live by finite rules, or do you want to live with an infinite mindset? Living our lives with a finite mindset means we're trying to make more money than anybody else. We want to advance ourselves higher than all our friends. We want to be the biggest. We want to be the best. We're going to be the strongest. And when we die, you don't take any of it with you. The choice to live with an infinite mindset means you commit to see that the people around you will carry on your ideas without you, and you will have a profound and positive impact in their lives. That one day in the future, I can go up to any of them and say, how did you become so wonderful? And they will say your name. I am who I am today in part because of you. You will literally live on beyond your own life. You will literally live an infinite life. It is just a choice. We get to choose how we want to live our lives. We get to choose how we want to run our businesses. It's not a question of right or wrong. It's just a choice to play by the rules for the game that we're actually in.